What's going on, Will? Welcome in. Welcome in. New week. Hell of a gap up to start the week, gotta say. Very impressive across the board for the most part. Lobo, what's going on? ¿Qué pasa? Nada. I mean, it's Monday. Gotta say, a lot going on this week. I think this is gonna be a pretty action-packed week. And then next week being only a 4-day week, I mean, they literally set us right up to see some. I think we're pretty much headed right into some volatility, is what I would say. But it was a hell of a start for the week. Got out 10% on the Disney play, didn't hold. Hey, as long as you made bank, that's really what it's all about, right? I mean, I think the biggest thing is pretty much being able to give you guys those actual breakout levels, those breakout points, off especially off of the newsletter plays. So maybe there's going to be a point later on in the week where we get continuation off of those moves, and we'll be able to be there to call them out. So glad to see that you actually made 10% on that Disney play. So hell of a move on your part for executing it and making sure that you locked in those profits. I think that's probably the biggest part. So it's easy to say, this is breaking out, that's breaking out, but it's harder to execute. So you did the right job in pretty much making sure that you secure those 10% in profits. All right. But pretty much to get started here, more so or less, again, big day to start the week. We have quite a few Fed speakers this week. The other thing that we have tomorrow is we do have some PMI ISM data coming out tomorrow. That's going to be something we're going to be watching. That's actually going to be within the first 15 and then 30 minutes of market open tomorrow. So I would caution about waiting to see how that data actually comes out. So likely wait the first 30 minutes of market open to see how the market's going to react to that data. So more than likely, I would anticipate that we more so get some kind of gap up, get a continuation out of a lot of these moves that we got today, just because of the fact that there's literally just no fear in the markets right now. Could there be profit taking come tomorrow morning? There's entirely possible, but it just feels like we're steamrolling right now, and we've seen this before in the past where market just steamrolls, whether it be into some kind of data that catches us off surprise, or it be off of some remark that a Fed speaker actually ends up saying. So I would expect this to be just a steamroll, whether it be into that PMI ISM data tomorrow. Maybe then we get the reaction, or we continue to just steamroll past that PMI ISM data. We continue this bull rally, and then we wait to see which Fed speaker this particular week ends up causing some kind of volatility to really spark in the market. All right. But other than that, I don't think there's anything that's really scaring us more so, except unless we really have that much of a bad data tomorrow, or we get a Fed speaker that really just gives us some kind of reckless news, and likely it's going to be something geared towards the rate hikes. Other than that, though, I don't really see too much that could cause us to really just plummet. It's just gonna be the Fed speaking. You're gonna see those comments where you're gonna be like, "This candle, wow, what happened?" That's basically what you're gonna have happen. Because I think there's about 5 or 6 speakers this week in total. So that ends up starting tomorrow, and that'll continue through the week. So just something to be cautious about. Just know what time each individual is actually speaking, so that way whether to see those candles, see if they get bought back up, or if we get any kind of continuation to the downside, whether there be something that is negatively said. All right. Can I look at Walmart? I am gonna look at it. I actually had it. Well, I had it on, yeah, on the major watch list. I had it, so I'll take a look at Walmart. I know that at the end of the day, I believe Dapper and Dougie are actually holding calls on Walmart. That was actually also the play, a newsletter play as well. So El Lobo, if I don't touch bases on exactly what you're looking for in detail, I would highly recommend going into the newsletter play and actually reading exactly what Dougie actually put, because I know he was looking at some particular things in detail. All right. But other than that, in terms of SPY, real quick, so we can jump into my general aspect of what I'm looking at in the broader markets here. SPY, hell of a reversal again off of that bottom that we put in from Friday. Beautiful reversal, beautiful gap up kind of a situation that we had today. Looking to see us pretty much make a break over here over this 457 and 3/4. 457.75 is that mark I want to see us get over tomorrow. So ideally, hopefully, we can at least make that breaking point by open if we don't get a strong gap up. Other than that, primarily looking to take out this high. I think we can gauge towards this 462. Over that 462 is where it's going to get dicey, and I'm looking for an overall target of 465, right? So everyone's pretty much going to have the reversal point for this entire leg up since SPY bottomed here in the beginning of March. Everyone's gonna have a different scenario. I think at one point, Avery was pretty much looking for 455 half, if I'm not mistaken, to be the top for today more so. I'm continuing to stay bullish. I think we get a move towards 465, and that's primarily also on the back end of sentiment right now. There's nothing in the market that's pretty much giving us a fair right now, right? We do have the inversion of the yield bonds. That's not something that the market is phased by right now. We have the slowdown that's pretty much already rumored around the whole entire market. That's really not doing anything for us right now. So, what's really gonna give us that U-turn in the markets right now? I don't see it right now. So for that reason, I you're pretty much leaning bullish to continue this rally. And so I'm watching 465 on SPY, but for any reason we get any kind of downside action, I'm pretty much looking under 452 would be where I think things then start to get ugly. But as long as we hold this 452 mark, I think that's pretty much a buy the dip opportunity, and we continue to push towards 465. All right, so that's big picture for me. Unless there is some kind of comment or any kind of scare off of data tomorrow, I continue to stay bullish, and 465 will be my projection that we're headed towards. All right, so that's pretty much as far as SPY. Other than that, just some names across the board that pretty much just stand out to me. I think Nvidia was one of them. This is one I'm pretty big on. I'm gonna continue to watch Nvidia. You see the little double bottom action you put in as of February 24th. We got the downtrend break here back from March 16th. And we kind of just made a little falling wedge type of action here. That we ended up trying to make that breakout today, but it wasn't very convincing. So I'm going to look to see if we get a continuation off of this little falling wedge action. See if we get a break over this 277 half tomorrow. And that'll likely be my leading indication of where I likely try to aim towards 290 calls will likely be what I end up gearing towards. But I want to see us break over this 277 half, and that'll be the spot in which I particularly look to get into 290 calls to take out this prior high from March 29th at that 289.46 mark. So that'll be what I'll be watching. Other than breaking that recent high from that March 29th, I'll be gearing up towards my supply zone, which I'm watching at 295 up towards 296 is ideally the spot I'm watching for with an overall move. So that's pretty much the one that I'm going to be looking for. What's going on, Jesse? What's going on, guys? Welcome in, welcome in. But again, Nvidia, I want to see us break that 275 half. We break that tomorrow. I'll jump in some 290 calls, and I think we can gear this up towards 296, in which I expect sellers to step in at that supply zone. All right. So that's one that I have on watch. The other scenario in terms of this, in terms of a bear case right now, will be is potentially we could make a higher low off of this from the March 29th high. We can make a lower high, and we could potentially make a head and shoulders right here. So that's something to also keep in mind right now. You have this little left shoulder right here, a little curled. You just made your right shoulder potentially with this falling wedge, and we can make a higher low here basically, in which that ends up curling us back down and make a head and shoulders. So something to monitor, something to keep in mind. But that 277 half is what I'm looking for to potentially go long. And so that's where it's going to be teetering, whether we're making a right shoulder or we're going to make that breakout towards that 290 mark to make another high there from that recent one on March 29th. All right. So that's the video. That's pretty much on watch. AMD, I think we pretty much name dropped this one quite a bit on live. I know that Avery was pretty much watching it as well. It's over that 210 mark. That was the level I was watching for it to pretty much get into calls right now. But this one actually has a little bit more of a limited upside. I think 113 half up towards 114 is the ideal spot where you can potentially get about a $3 move out of this right now from current mark. So that'll be a little bit limited though. So maybe a scalp opportunity tomorrow. Maybe it turns red. You get it under 110 mark. But I think under 110 was the ideal spot to load up on this. I wouldn't go chasing it, granted the fact that the upside is more limited. All right. So that's just something that I would pretty much be cautious about. I think if you're looking for more upside, you're pretty much gauged towards NVIDIA rather than AMD, just because this name has just been getting so much selling pressure. And I think there's more selling in terms of this wanting AMD back under 100. I think is favoring it right now. So it's just holding at a standstill right now with this market rally. But I think 114 is more so your top that you're looking. I don't think you get close to filling this gap up here above that 116.38. So something to be cautious about. So preference would be gauging towards NVIDIA rather than AMD. All right. But if you were to be able to get into AMD, under 110 is that ideal spot, and you take that $4 right up to 110. All right. I'll just jump to it real quick because I know Lobo, you wanted to look at Walmart real quick. Walmart continues to stay on my watch list right now. I didn't particularly want to swing calls on this, to be honest with you. So I am going to particularly wait to see if we get a better entry tomorrow. Honestly, I think we could potentially get a better entry if we end up seeing broader market pullback. So that's what I want to say. Just because of the fact that if you end up treating this like what I would say is maybe like your parallel channel, if you want to say that for the matter, right? If you made draw the line here and you have that supply zone at the top, you're pretty much buying right into the resistance here at that high that it made from November 13th. So ideally, I would rather get in on a pullback than try to chase it up here at my supply zone right now, near that high that it pretty much rejected off of. So that was pretty much just the mindset that I ended up having. Ideally, if I'm looking for a pullback here, I would ideally look to see if we can get a nice little healthy pullback, I want to say. If we pretty much get a move down towards 148 would be my spot here that I'm watching. So if we can get about a $148, I think you can get down to a 148 by the end of the week here, and then we'll take this to that 155 mark next week. It's just because of the fact of how much it's already ripped so much. I think you're gonna need a more healthy pullback to get that extra push to get it past that all-time high. That's really just what I'm looking at in terms of how it is. The overall target that he had was 153. So that 153 literally just smacked that all-time high that we just made back from that November 23rd. So it does make sense then. I'm glad you pointed that out, El Lobo. So you literally went right into close enough towards that prior all-time high. But again, I think you're going to need a healthier pullback, probably towards that 147 or 148 mark would be where I'm going to load up. I'll likely say it on live as well. But I think you're going to need that healthy pullback to then make a beautiful little uptrend, whether it be in a bull pennant or some sort of pattern, to get that push in which we make that grand push towards past that one high of 153, and then we could potentially talk about 155, 158 at that point in time. It's kind of tough. So until it ends up breaking this all-time high, 153.66, yeah, you could chase it here to get that $2 move and potentially break that high. It's just the risk reward is not there in terms of me trying to get this right here, right now, after making pretty much that wick that I don't like at that all-time high. So if we would have potentially actually broke the high today, and then we would have got that steep pullback that we got into the end of the day, I would have felt a lot better because of the fact that we ended up breaking the all-time high. But the fact that we didn't break that all-time high, it tells me that we need to chop here, get a little bit of a pullback before we get that strong push towards breaking that all-time high. That's basically the price action is telling me right now. So I could be wrong, but I wouldn't necessarily try to push it here until we necessarily break that 153.66 then, if we don't get a meaningful pullback. All right. So hopefully that kind of gave you a better idea, Lobo, in terms of how I would go about playing this, but not necessarily trying to chase it here after we rejected right into trying to make a new all-time high there. All right. That was the other one. I'm gonna continue to watch it. We'll see how tomorrow goes with it. Granted the fact that hopefully we get a pullback off of Walmart. We'll see what it does. The other one was pretty much I haven't paid too much attention to Amazon today. I know that the price action was pretty wicked. I usually don't pay attention to Amazon too much until maybe about midweek, just because I know the premiums are pretty expensive. I know that no one really wants to pay what 3-4K at the money pretty much for a play like this. So it's just something that I usually end up trying to avoid until midweek. But two scenarios pretty much play out here. Kind of similar to how the Nvidia play looks like right now. Obviously, you have this little left shoulder, you made the head, and this push that you had towards the end of the day was just a beautiful one. The only thing is, I do want to see this gap up over the high of the day here, over this move over 34.17. Otherwise, you do risk potentially making a head and shoulders here, in which we're likely going to see some downside action tomorrow morning. So that's what I'll potentially be watching to see if we make a head and shoulders, or if we get a gap up over today's high, and then I could potentially see us into my supply zone between 34.27 up towards 34.40 will be my ideal spot in which I can see profit taking step in, and we'll see a pullback off of that high. All right. If you also notice, that was pretty much prior resistance back from the end of December that pretty much was your distribution, in which that led to that downfall to start the year, right? So that's ideally pretty much the high of where it was December before the drop off is what I'm looking to target here, and that's basically your move right into that 34.40 mark is what I'm going to be watching. So that's what I'll keep an eye on tomorrow. Once we break over that 34.40, then we'll see where exactly we're headed to. But that still gives you quite a bit of upside here, from 33.66 up towards that 34.40 mark. So a hell of a nice move off of that. I would just caution about a potential head and shoulders in which maybe you see quote unquote some profit taking tomorrow if that head and shoulders does end up playing out. And if I'm looking for an ideal potential like dip buy spot, if that's what we would potentially look at, your dips buy spot is pretty much right around 31.79 potentially, depending how that head and shoulders plays out, right? So 31.79, 31.80 is that spot potentially. If it does play out, that will be your potential dip buy spot in which you're going to be looking for reversal. All right. So that's AMD. That's Amazon. The other one, of course, Tesla. Everyone's watching Tesla right now. I think the majority of traders are pretty much swinging Tesla right now. The only thing I would caution about Tesla here, in which I do expect a little bit of a gap up, my only concern about it is that I don't think it's going to necessarily hold tomorrow morning in per se. So I think tomorrow morning you'll get a better opportunity of a dip buy rather than trying to swing it. That's just in terms of risk reward. Obviously, you already had a $60 move today from Tesla, but that 1158, 1160 right into this resistance of this descending broadening wedge is what gives me that pause to concern right now. So once you end up smacking that 1160 tomorrow, hopefully you see it by a gap up tomorrow. Otherwise, you're gonna likely see a little bit of a dip and then rip. So I think I'm favoring the dip and rip tomorrow. Granted the fact that we already had so much of a move today, I think we get a little bit more of a bigger dip tomorrow morning, and then I'll pretty much take this right over that 1160 mark tomorrow, and then we could talk about those 1200 calls that literally were just hitting all day. If you looked at the flow alerts, it was literally just nonstop 1200 calls, 1200 calls. So it makes sense that we make that move towards 1200. That was pretty much also the prior resistance that we had back from the beginning of January. That was on January 12th. So I would expect to pretty much smack our head on that 1200 strike, and that'll be where you'll likely see a lot of sellers start to step in. So make sure you pretty much are not the last one holding that bag, and that you secure your profits. All right. But other than that, if we do get some kind of dip opportunity here, I'm pretty much watching 1108. That'll be my dip buy spot as low as 1108. You get that to 1108, I think you buy it with both hands and you take it right back up to break that high of 1160 at resistance, and then 1200 is what I'm targeting. All right, so that's just big picture wise for Tesla. I think that's just a beautiful move in the making here. But again, I just think you may have another opportunity to get into it tomorrow morning. So those of you that didn't get it today, don't feel bad. I know that it was pretty hard not to chase a lot of the names today. So if you didn't chase it, I think that's pretty much just part of discipline as well. So I think you didn't do anything wrong on your part, is what I would say. All right. Other than that, the other one was pretty much Apple. We saw the cloud alert go off today. So that was pretty much a big sign. They literally targeted it right around 177, low 177 range is what they hit on the Apple Cloud. It's projected to basically make a $3 move. It's basically all technicals. There's not necessarily any flow that's related to that cloud alert. So that's actually the beauty of it. It's just technicals. So obviously it has a win rate, and that's why you see it's displayed on the cloud alerts, whether it be an 80, 90% win rate. So I think this one was about an 80%, 80 and some change percent win rate off of the Apple algo that went off. So from that low 177 mark is basically projected to make a $3 move. So we're basically looking at it just over 180 uh, in terms of getting that completed move. All right. So we'll look to see if we get continuation on this one. I could see a little bit of a pullback here, probably about just about 178 flat. We know that Apple usually holds with relative strength. So this is the one I don't expect too much of a pullback here, but likely once 178 flat, just probably wick under 178 would be where a pullback would be ideal here. And then we get that continuation towards the high from March 30th. We'll break that high over that 179.61, and then we can make that push that I have up towards one. I have about 180 half to push 181. So that's pretty much where my ideal supply spot is sitting. based upon prior price action from the end of December. All right. So that's another one. We'll keep an eye. That one's pretty much based right off of the cloud alert. Other than that, also just keep in mind the other one was backtracking just Tesla. I know that there was actually two cloud alerts that went off today, and those were, I believe, about anywhere between $10 to $15 off of each of them. So that's something to keep in mind. I believe the last one went off pretty late in the day. I don't know if it completed the entire move. So that's something to just keep in mind as well going into tomorrow. But definitely double check on that alert to see what price point it actually triggered and what the expected move was. All right. Other than that, I think we can also point to Shop. I think Shop is just another one we'll keep on the watch here. Granted, the fact that if we get continuation on upside, just a beautiful little wedge action here. Let's see if we get this break over this 738 half. We get a break over that 738, then we can start talking about this gap fill here yet again to test it at that 796 mark. So that's just one that I'm going to continue to watch. If we get that break over that 738, 740 ballpark, then 800 calls might be on the table here for this one because this could be quite a rather swift move following right behind Amazon in terms of upside. All right. But I think those are primarily the ones that I really want to just point out for you guys in terms of what I'm watching. I know that Sig and Dapper pretty much have a lot of the unusual tickers pretty much on lock in terms of their tendy thread and also the tendy to go. So for those of you that like the unusual ones, the unusual tickers, I know that they have those on lock. I know that I also had Uber that was pretty much on watch this morning. That was a beautiful one. In terms of Twitter, which I also did forget about Twitter. I kind of had it marked up here. I can probably look at it out the weekly in terms of the levels that I was watching. I was watching to see if we end up holding today's pretty much half of today's move. As long as we hold this 48 half, basically, I'm pretty much targeting this to make a move towards 53, up towards 54 would be my ideal spot in terms of supply, in which you're going to see some heavy selling at that price point. So between 53 to 54 would be where I would target. So that gives you about from current level right now at close 49 up to 54. You're looking about still about a $5 potential move here up towards that. So all depends. Hopefully you can get a nice little dip opportunity here tomorrow. Maybe we see some early profit taking. We can get a nice little dip entry at that 48 half, and then you take that right up, and we can literally just be about close to about a $5-6 move if we get a halfway back off of today's price action. All right. So that's what I'll be watching for on Twitter. I think either Twitter or Tesla. I think majority are pretty much holding calls. So if that's the case and we see maybe a gap up or we see an early profit taken tomorrow morning, that's where I'm going to look to pretty much take advantage off of is those early morning profit takers, little early morning dip, and that's where we'll see where if we still have relative strength or not in Tesla or Twitter primarily. All right. Granted, the fact those are the two that's pretty much on everyone's watch list. It's all over Twitter. Those are likely the two names that are will be highly anticipated tomorrow for continuation. All right. So if you're looking for dip buys, I think those are the two that you're pretty much looking at across the board. All right. But other than that, that kind of wraps up the names I was looking at, some patterns, levels I was watching. So hopefully that kind of gave you a better gauge. But again, a lot of Fed speakers this week, so just be cautious about that. So you're gonna see these pretty wicked candles going starting tomorrow, something to be aware of. And then we have that data coming out tomorrow morning within the first 30 minutes of market open. So be cautious about that as well. All right. But other than that, kind of wraps up what I was looking at for right now. We'll see what market price action gives us tomorrow morning. If some other names pretty much come across our board, and we'll be there to call it out. All right. Other than that, wraps it up. Appreciate you guys joining. Drop a like. But other than that, I'll see you guys in the morning. Have a good one, guys.